Welcome. Before we focus in on some behavior interventions for the classroom, we want to start off by thinking about two commonly used strategies that we as educators should really be rethinking. We know that the best foundation for classroom intervention is a strong Tier 1 behavior system, and that starts with solid implementation of school-wide PBIS. Solid implementation of school-wide PBIS will enhance what we are trying to do in the classroom. We know that the principles of school-wide PBIS can and should be applied within the classroom setting. It is also important that things like grade level teams are meeting regularly to review academic and behavioral data at grade level team meetings, and that they're building plans to address common grade level needs, both academically and socially. From here, we recognize that teachers still may need to implement simple behavioral interventions in the classroom in order to address high-frequency, low-intensity behaviors. However, there are two commonly used classroom strategies that we should really all stop and pause and rethink their use. The two strategies are progressive consequences and time out of class. We will unpack these strategies and why it's time to rethink using them in schools. Most, if not all of you, are familiar with the concept of progressive consequences. It's a system in which a student's card or an object is turned, pulled, or moved for a problem behavior with increasing consequences given at each step. The appeal to teacher is really because they provide a quick way to communicate to a student that they have made a behavioral error and provide planned responses to behavior. However, there are issues that come with the use of clip charts or other progressive consequences. The first is inconsistency is consistent. It is very difficult for teachers to be absolutely consistent in their own responses to every behavior, and for teachers to be consistent with each other. It often results in teachers not moving a card when, according to the rules, they should, or to give too severe a penalty for a repeated minor behavior. This dilemma between teachers being overly harsh or overly lenient is confusing for students to know what the expectations actually are from day to day or class to class. Consider times when a student continues to make minor behavior errors. The teacher has moved the student's clip from green to yellow and provided the reminder. The behavior occurs again a few minutes later, and the teacher moves the student's clip to orange and prompts the student and gives a warning. Later that morning, the minor behavior occurs again, and the teacher really does not want to have to call home for this behavior, so the teacher looks the student in the eyes and says, "Don't make me move your clip," leading the student to think that she has the power to make her teacher do something she doesn't want to do. Or the teacher says something like, "I really don't want to have to move your clip," leaving the student to wonder, what does she want to do? And in some case, they may continue the misbehavior just to find out what the teacher does want to do. The breach of confidentiality is the second issue with progressive consequences. We always want to ask ourselves the question, is this system treating students with dignity and respect? Often, students do not feel fairly and respectfully treated by having their challenges publicly displayed and attention called to their mistakes. If we look at this practice from a student's perspective, we can't help but wonder how it feels to always have a red or yellow card by your name. Students and families are publicly humiliated or embarrassed. If it is not okay to post an F paper on the wall of the school, why would it be appropriate to post an F behavior on the wall for everyone to see? When I talk about this idea, I talk about students who really struggle with the idea of being publicly called out for their behavior and how that sometimes can actually escalate behavior unintentionally. The third thing that we want to focus on when it comes to issues related to progressive consequences is asking ourselves the question, is this actually changing behavior? The bottom line is that our intended outcome is to change student behaviors, so we must ask ourselves if this is actually what is happening with clip charts or other forms of progressive consequences. These are rarely ever truly effective, and we know that in some cases, the actual moving of the clip or card is the only in response to students' behavior. We know behavior does not change simply because the clip is moved or the card is flipped. If you're having students who are consistently working their way through the progressive consequences on a daily basis, that intervention is not working for them. We have to think about doing things differently. The second common strategy that we see in classrooms that we want to rethink using is this idea of time out of class. This is when a student who's not meeting behavioral expectations is sent out of the classroom to places such as a buddy teacher classroom, a responsible thinking classroom, or another location. We want to think strategically about what is happening with time out of class and why it might not be the best strategy to use. So some of the issues that come up with time out of class include a loss of instructional time, that on some level, whether we realize it or not, we as the adults may be reinforced when the student is removed from the classroom. And if we're being reinforced, that's increasing the likelihood that we will use it again in the future as a strategy. We also have to recognize that the student themselves may be reinforced by escaping or avoiding the work or activities in the classroom, or us as the adult, and they're going to increase the likelihood that they will display that behavior again in the future in order to, again, escape or avoid the activity, the work, or us as the adult. We want to be really thoughtful about how we're using this and why we're using it. And again, asking ourselves the question, is it really working? So a few years back, I was working with a team in a training, and they had called me over during one of the activities and said, hey, we use time out of class all the time, and it really works for us. And so I started to probe them and ask them some questions. And I was going to be meeting with them again in about a month. And so I said, do me a favor, for the next month, write down somewhere, who are the kids who are leaving the class, being sent out of class somewhere else for time out of classroom, and record how long they're gone when each time they go. So who are they? How often are they going? How long are they gone for? And just keep that data for a month. And when we come back together in a month, I said, let's look at that and see how well it really is working. So fast forward a month, they come back and I said, can you show me your data? And they looked at me and they kind of chuckled and they said, no, after about 3 days, we stopped because we didn't realize how often we were using this as a strategy, how frequently kids were out of classroom, and for how long. And so we need to think about something different because we're losing too much instructional time, and because the fact that the same kids are being sent out of class over and over again tells us that this intervention is not actually working. So we want to be really mindful of what's going on and what we can do about it. So before we finish this video, I'd like you to take a moment and pause and reflect on your own observations in school. Have you ever seen a progressive consequence, such as a color chart or a clip chart, used in classrooms? Have you ever observed time out of classroom being used? Has it actually worked to consistently change behavior for all students? Did this strategy or intervention consistently treat the students with respect and dignity? So just pause for a few moments and think about that. This brings us to the end of our brief recording of 2 strategies commonly used in the classroom that we want to rethink. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to having you join us in the behavior interventions in the classroom.